Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sasan Show, a podcast where I have interesting conversations with smart, intelligent people. So, I'm a huge fan of the Dan John podcast. And for those of you who've not listened to his podcast, every week people send him fitness related questions and he answers them. Inspired by his podcast, I've endeavored to replicate something similar. To help answer the questions that listeners have sent me, I have Arun Pandiyan. Arun is a strength and conditioning coach. He's worked with a wide variety of people, ranging from serious athletes, people with injuries, as well as fitness enthusiasts. If I was to talk of his sporting accomplishments, it would take me the whole day. However, some of his sporting accomplishments are that he's a third-degree black belt in karate, has represented India in the Commonwealth Karate Championships held in South Africa. He's also captained and coached the Indian men's ultimate frisbee team at the World Championships held in Dubai. Welcome to the Sasan Show, Arun.
Thank you for having me, Brigu. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about the other stuff, because I feel like a lot of people know me as a fitness coach, but yeah, I think the reason I even got into this field was because I genuinely enjoy just doing stuff that's physically active, and I think that's been part of my lifestyle now for a very long time. So that's the genesis of all of where all this fitness talk and kind of comes from for me.
And I think that's true for a lot of people. A lot of people have a background in sport, and as they grow up, that kind of changes towards fitness. Of course, you have some people who've never played sport, and later on they take to fitness, and some of them take to fitness like a duck to water. But a lot of people, have played a lot of sport from childhood. Yeah. And I'm a big believer. If you're listening to this and you have children, I would recommend that they play sport, any sport, whatever they enjoy.
Yeah.
Can we get down to the questions?
Let's go for it. Yeah.
Okay. So the questions are, so the first question is from my friend Daryl. I'm in my early 30s and I've played a lot of sport growing up, but sadly over the past few years, I haven't been very active. Me and another friend of mine want to walk from Bangalore to Mysore. We'll cover about 110 kilometers. We want to cover the distance over a period of 2 days. We have 4 months to train for this. We can train 4 days a week. What training program would you recommend for us? Also, what is your advice on how we should hydrate and eat over the course of the walk?
Right off the bat, listening to somebody who wants to, or rather taking a question from somebody who wants to cover the distance of 110 kilometers in 2 days, I personally think that's an amazing, I feel mind blown by such a task. And I think you were telling me that you've done something very similar in the past. And in my experience with preparation for a long endurance kind of based event as this, or trying to take the time to do it over 2 days, one part of the question did mention sort of 4 months and being able to commit to 4 days a week. The way I view sort of any sort of an endeavor like this, I think the amount of time that I was to take to prepare for something like this would help me feel at ease while doing this. And so giving yourself a number of 4 months to prepare for this, if you were to give yourself a slightly longer duration, the level of preparation that you could go into it with this would help you feel a lot more at ease, like to do something like this. So I was right off the bat, I think 4 months and 4 days a week, if your friend Daryl is able to kind of revisit that and say, in 4 months, for example, what's the weather going to be like? Is it going to be super hot? Or maybe is this something to do with it better at the end of the year? Maybe 6 months might give you a slightly more sort of time to prepare your body for something like this. The way as a fitness coach, I think I'm very excited to work with clients who have these goals of wanting to achieve something within a certain amount of time. But having said that, this person's legs and like their body is going to stay with them for life after this. And looking at this from a sort of holistic perspective as to, I would like this person to come out of this event feeling strong, feeling like they're capably able to do stuff like this without having to have to deal with a lot of the injuries or like the sort of the negative side of lack of preparation that comes with this. And so just to kind of set the context, I'd say, given that this is a goal that this person wants to achieve in 4 months, I think having them sort of revisit how much time they're willing to commit to this and then sort of start from that, I think would be a good question. Having said that, what training program would you recommend for this? Given that we are talking about walking, I think for a really extended period of time, having this person's legs and body kind of have the level of resiliency to be able to go through this is what's important. And so in training and preparation for this, I don't know that like it wouldn't make sense to do 110 kilometers for like every week preparation for this. You've got to like slowly, gradually build yourself up to it. And I think having one day a week where you do like a 5K or a 10K, kind of slowly having a weekly count of how much distance we're covering, starting with some all unloaded stuff. I imagine that this journey from Bangalore to Mysore would involve some amount of carrying something along with you, your clothes, your water, a few other things like that. So I think getting used to just having a bag on your back and then just kind of doing an endurance event weekly on a weekly basis. It doesn't have to be extremely grueling, but kind of making sure you get your just steps in, getting that work done. So once a week, I think having a long endurance kind of a run or a jog would be really good. I am a big proponent of making sure that your body is strong enough to be able to handle the loads that we're talking about. So I think having 2 days a week of some form of resistance training is very beneficial for somebody that who wants to kind of get into running a little bit more. And just by resistance training, it doesn't have to be anything too complex. But the idea is that you are using an external resistance to get your body to get stronger. And that could be something as simple as a leg press. It could be something as simple as just doing some lunges or like walking lunges or whatever it is, a very basic form of resistance training to help your body kind of prep for that. I think 2 days a week, that should be a good thing. And on the third day, I think like a ruck, I think having a sort of resistance based sort of walk that is with your body weight, but also say 30% more or 40% more in some cases, where having a little bit of extra load on you and being able to cover X amount of time will help you familiarize yourself with the skill of being able to do that much walking.
I will just
Yeah.
cut you short.
Oh,
Arun.
please go for it. Yeah.
So when Arun is talking of rucking, what he's basically saying is that rucking is basically walking with a backpack on. It's done by pretty much every military unit in the world. Because a lot of you may not know what rucking is. Yes, Arun. Sorry to have interrupted.
Thanks for clarifying that. I think with rucking, I think the percentage of weight that you are carrying with you is an appreciable amount. It's not like just carrying a few grocery bags. It's like you're carrying a certain amount of weight on you, and then you're getting your body used to being able to carry that weight over a certain amount of time. And so there's a lot of cardiovascular benefit to that. There's a lot of other benefits to being able to do that over an extended period. I think so. So that would be some sort of a training program that this person could follow. But beyond that, given that this is a goal that we want to see ourselves getting to, it's not about just, hey, I did this 4 times a week for 4 months and I got that. I would like to know that, hey, in month 1 to month 2, what has the progress been like? Has there been any progress? And so kind of giving yourself some sort of way to benchmark, saying, hey, at the end of the month, I did a 5K or a 10K, and it felt like I was able to do it within the next amount of time. I was able to complete it easily. So having some sort of standard or some sort of benchmark to see how your training is progressing is also a sort of good way to do it. And I think once a month, having some form of this benchmark would give you, or would give Daryl in this case, the perspective of like, okay, is what I'm doing kind of making sense? Do I feel like I'm kind of getting to the stage where this is something that's going well? So something challenging once a month, 4 days a week of just doing the stuff, I think would be good. Having said that, the last bit about the question, if I remember correctly, which was talking about hydration.
Can I hold you back? Yeah. Can I hold you back for a minute?
Go for it. Please go ahead.
Arun, I've loved the answer. I've loved this answer. I would like to just put in another variable here. What is your take on how Daryl and his friend should recover? Because you don't want them to get hurt in the middle.
Yeah. And so just to be clear, we're talking about hurt in the middle of this 110 that this person is going to be like hurt in the middle of training, or
hurt in the middle of training. Hurt in the middle of training.
Understood.
But feel free to expand. Yeah. Feel free to expand it to the 110. But my question was specifically about getting hurt in the middle.
So I think injuries very often that come up in training happen as a result of like not being able to grade the level of intensity or exposure to a lot of these intense things. So take, for example, somebody who has not done any form of exercise in terms of resistance training or gone to a like gym kind of related exercise. And if you were to go suddenly take this person, put them into a really rigorous training routine, there is a chance of injuries and things happening. So I think that gradient of starting at the level where you're at, or in this case, that if this person is sort of not a particularly active person right now at life, slowly building up an activity level. And it could be from a very basic, like kind of, hey, I'm just going to walk on the treadmill today and like just do that for like 2 minutes. And then I'm going to like just not do anything for 2 minutes. And so like starting at a level where this person feels confident that the amount of effort that they're putting in is challenging, but at the same time, it's not breaking them down. Because I think that's where the key is, trying to find something to do that is challenging, but that is not breaking you down. And that requires a little bit of patience with how you kind of approach the training. That so sorry, the video got cut for a sec.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think my thing with injuries is that just take it based on where this person is now, and with sorry, he could take it based on where he is now, and go from a sort of gradual stage. Hey, okay, I'm able to do week one of this, and then base week two's sort of activity or the capacity of work that you're doing based off how week one went, and then slowly over the course of 3 to 4 weeks make changes. I think the issues with injuries that happen very often happen when, hey, yesterday felt like a really great day. Today, when I go to the gym or today when I go do my exercise, I'm going to do twice as what I did, or I'm going to do 50% more than what I did the last time. And so these increments, if they are more gradual in whatever exercise that we do, gradual increments will ensure that we don't get injured for any of the resistance training stuff, or even the running for that matter. Having said that, the 110K, while that is an extremely large amount and over 2 days, I think I'm ill-equipped to kind of advise this person as to what kind of hydration and what kind of uh, nutrition this person should be consuming during the event. Uh, I feel like I think this person kind of consulting with somebody who's done sort of these endurance events in the past would be a really good shout. I know for a fact that I think the weather being like a really hot climate will definitely change this in a big way. What the situation would be like. Doing it through the rain, doing it through a colder climate would have different demands on this. So I think being a little bit aware of sort of what the journey is going to be like, what the 110K is going to be like, maybe talking to people who've done this in the past, and sort of getting their opinion on sort of what would be best practice for how to hydrate and stay strong for this, I think would be a good thing to do, because that's the side of it that I'm a little bit unsure of as to what would be the best way to approach it.
I think that was brilliant, Arun. I think I have nothing more to add because I think you've answered pretty much every question. There's nothing left to doubt as to what Daryl has to do. Moving on to question number 2, or is there something else you'd like to add?
No, all okay. Yeah.
So moving on to the second question. So the second question is from Ankita. I'm in my early 30s, have been working out for over a decade now. I have the following questions on protein powders. Do you recommend whey or vegan protein powders? I'm not lactose intolerant. When do you recommend I take my protein powder? Can you share any interesting, easy to make recipes with protein powder for busy people?
I think this is this is an issue that a lot of people that I think I worked with, and you definitely have worked with as well. So like this is an issue that definitely people face in a big way, and I think thinking of protein in terms of something that is needed for the body, I would recommend that somebody look at whey protein as a supplement to what is currently part of their diet. And I think whey is a very easy way to be able to catch up on the amount of protein that you need to have. Specifically about what this person's question about whey or vegan protein powders, if you're not lactose intolerant, I don't know that you would need something that specifically caters to a certain audience. I think whey protein should suffice as a whole. As for the when do you recommend you take protein powder, well, there is some sort of science to say that protein is best consumed within certain windows. My understanding of sort of your nutrition side of things is that think of your body as like over the course of a week, and say, are you consuming all of the things that your body needs to be able to fuel you for all of the activities that you do? And so having a time frame to ingest everything, I don't think is as important, but making sure you do have the right things on a daily basis is important. So I think that should kind of help this person understand that, just getting your protein in, getting your supplements, making sure your diet is kind of well-rounded and you're consuming it on a regular basis. I think that's one of the hardest things as well, in that you could buy your whey protein and you'd be like, hey, I want to make this last for like a month and a half. And so kind of taking a scoop every so often, or like not being consistent about it. I think trying to figure out a way that you can kind of make sure that you're consistently able to consume this is just super important. And like this person asked for like a recipe to somebody who's busy and wants to be able to have whey. I am a very Spartan kind of person, and so for me, milk and whey, water and whey is something that I've done in the past. But having said that, I think making it more palatable, something that I did was overnight oats. I think milk, some oats, put your whey in, mix it up a bit. If you want to add some bananas or some fruit to add a little bit like more sweet or sugar to it, you can do that. And then yeah, let it sit in the fridge. And in the next morning, it should taste like a really nice dessert. That's also super healthy. So yeah, I feel like yeah, to make whey palatable, yeah, having a simple sort of recipe that helps you kind of get on with it. The overnight oats was my thing. It should be easy to find some way to be able to do that for you as well. Sorry, have I covered the question? I was just kind of looking at it on my screen right now, and I was trying to see if I covered
You
everything.
you have you have. I would just like to add a little to
Yeah,
your question, to what you said.
right.
So first of all, 100% with you, Arun, on this. All I would say is, let's say you're at the store and you're buying your supplement. Go to your supplement and have a look at it. Number one, the first thing you want is that per scoop, you want to be getting anywhere between 20 to 30 grams of protein. This is a checklist I have for myself. The second thing you want to be doing is checking how many calories are you getting per scoop. You want it to be about 100 to 150 calories. You definitely want to keep an eye on this, because you don't want someone who's added a lot of things to make it very palatable, very tasty, and have a lot of
Yeah,
added sugar, which then will make the calories more than 150. So be
yeah,
slightly mindful of this. And the third thing, and perhaps this is something a lot of people don't talk about, you want to be getting about 5 to 12 grams of BCAAs from this. And this is something which, these three, if you can have these three checklists, not more than 100 to 150 calories per scoop, 20 to 30 grams of protein, and about 5 to 12 grams of BCAAs.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Coming to the other point that Arun was talking about, where he's basically, let's not major in the minors. Okay. Are you
Yeah,
getting enough protein is a
yeah,
way more important question than the timing of that protein. Once you start getting enough protein on a regular basis consistently, we can then look at the timing. But
yeah,
let's keep things simple. First, make sure that you're getting enough protein. And he said it beautifully. We said, in a week, are you getting enough protein?
yeah,
We can look at everything else later.
yeah. I think measuring in the minors is definitely something that, especially when there's a lot of information available, I
Yeah.
think the information looks very attractive and important. And it's like, hey, yeah, some study said that, oh, if I consume protein within X amount of time of my workout, it'll get absorbed even faster. And so I think kind of trying to shoot for low hanging fruit is far more effective as a tool. Are you getting enough protein in your diet just as a whole? And I think like trying to fix the larger issues with regards to what your nutrition should look like is far more important than like I think the really small nitty gritty stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, and to the simple one word answer is, Arun was of the opinion that a whey protein supplement would be better for those people that are not lactose intolerant. Is that a fair?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I very often vegan protein. A few of the protein powders do also like come at a premium price, and I know for a fact that if you were to just go for regular old whey protein, there are a lot of brands that do a very good job and are very nominally priced.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it should be fine. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Uh, the next question is from Akshata. I'm a 34-year-old lady. My goals are getting fitter and losing weight. I can train 6 days a week. What is the best way for me to get a mix of both strength training and cardio? I really enjoy strength training and don't enjoy cardio as much. Also, can you give me some tips on nutrition? My main issue is that I don't get enough protein and vegetables in my diet.
That's right off the bat. I think this person is a beast for having to say that they can train 6 days a week and they already have been doing a bunch of things. And I think just listening to what this person has to say, my personal relationship with sort of this concept of enjoying strength training but not cardio as much, I relate to that personally because I think very often growing up, like activities like running or swimming, and these were all activities that kind of physically would gas you out. And I personally, every time I feel gassed out, is just it's one of the worst feelings. But when you're doing sort of resistance training, strength training, exercise, say you're doing squats or deadlifts or your bench press or your overhead press, a lot of these activities require you to take a sufficient amount of break, like rest, so that you're able to come back to it and attack it hard. But with anything cardiovascular, you don't get that option to be able to have that rest. And so very often in my own mind, it was a conversation I had to have with myself on my fitness journey to be like, hey, how do I kind of desensitize myself from this, like fearing cardio or not liking cardio as much? And I have a suggestion that I could make for this person, and that is to kind of start some form of sort of interval training. And I say this to say that the process of enjoying cardio happens when it is something that doesn't feel too far outside your comfort zone. And so the best way to kind of build that is to start within your comfort zone to say, hey, I know that if I'm going to go run all out for 60 seconds, I will be gassed. So your outer limit is probably 60 seconds. So start with a sort of interval where you're working for, say, 20 seconds. Do something super intense for 20 seconds. It could be cycling, it could be running on a treadmill, it could be climbing up a bunch of stairs, it could be whatever like this cardiovascular exercise that you want to do, any version of it. Do it for a duration that you know you could do very easily. Like 20 seconds is just a great place to start. And then take an appreciable amount of rest. So I'm going to work for 20 seconds and I'm going to just chill for 30 seconds, 40 seconds even. So that's like 1 minute where you're doing something for 20 seconds and then 40 seconds of just doing nothing. So when you start yourself off with cardiovascular stuff in with rest periods that give you enough rest that let you feel like, hey, I'm not going to die, over the course of say 2 to 3 weeks of just following a regimen where you were to do say, hey, you know what, I'm going to do 20 rounds of climbing upstairs and I'm going to climb upstairs for 30 seconds and then I'm going to do nothing for 60 seconds and then I'm going to do that 20 times. If you were to do that on a regular basis within week 2 or week 3, you'll automatically notice that what was once outside your comfort zone may feel like all of a sudden it's a lot easier. And so gradually kind of building yourself up to do these sort of endurance kind of cardiovascular events as opposed to throwing yourself in the deep end. And this is something I think a lot of fitness coaches are guilty of. And in the interest of trying to get your clients to really do more, we end up pushing people to to go far outside their comfort zone. And that's very scary because if you were to go ask yourself, hey, later on, I don't have a coach right now. I'm going to go train by myself. I want to do cardio, but the last memory of cardio that I had was this coach pushing me to like I couldn't move anymore. And so there's a lot of people with relationships to a lot of things where there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of like, oh shit, I'm nervous about this. How do I kind of go about it? And so like starting with sort of at a place where you know you can do something very well and then kind of operating just off of that. And I think that's an important way to look at it, because the way I see this person is that if they're able to commit to 6 days a week to do like strength training, getting fitter, and just doing a bunch of other things, I think the amount of discipline that this person has is amazing. And so maybe try doing cardio, but with a little less kind of intensity and like slowly kind of working your way up to it, because strength work is something that it comes naturally to a lot of us. I'm sure you may be able to relate to this as well. Like the joy that you get from being able to complete a heavy set of say squats and stuff. For me, it was something that came a lot quicker. But being able to enjoy the cardiovascular difficulty of like, hey, okay, I'm going to do this endurance kind of based event and not freak out about it and get the same kind of energy out of that is definitely takes a bit of kind of mentally conditioning yourself to say, okay, I'm gassed, I'm going to take a little bit of break and then I'm going to come back to it, as opposed to just kind of hit the wall. So sorry, that was a very long-winded thing. My opinion on this comes from sort of my take on how I believe that I would like this to be a part of my life. Like doing strength work is important, but also doing endurance based stuff is good for your heart, it's good for your physiological markers. There are so many things that kind of benefit from being able to enjoy cardio. And yeah, I think if you're able to kind of address where the sort of barrier is mentally, I think this person would be able to get there. So yeah, start slow. As for the last bit of the
No,
question,
I'd like to
sorry, go ahead.
press you
Please
a
go
little
ahead.
more.
Yeah.
So Arun, excellent. But what we haven't answered is what would be the ideal split? How many days of strength? How many days of cardio?
Okay,
And
sure.
does it even have to be like you have to do strength and cardio like
Right.
on separate days?
Right. That's a great question. I was gonna say I think doing some amount of it every day is perfectly doable. When I used to work at gyms in the past, I think we'd have a sort of setup of an hour-long session where there's some amount of strength work, there's some amount of cardiovascular stuff, there's some amount of endurance, and there's like a warm-up and a cool-down at the end of the start and the finish of it. And so if you were to structure a training program, I'd say having like a little bit of it every day is a better way to approach it, as opposed to just saying, hey, one day I'm just going to go do this. I mean, and it's perfectly fine to want to go for a run on one day and say, hey, I'm not going to work out today. I'm just going to go see if I can run a 5K. Absolutely. But if you were to personally ask me what would be the best way to train for it, I personally would like to have some amount of it every day. Given that this person is doing 6 days a week, I think having a session where you are able to, where this person is able to do some sort of strength work, and then maybe go into doing some sort of cardiovascular endurance type stuff is also beneficial from the perspective of your strength work will help you do your cardiovascular work really well. And this is from the sport performance side of things, where having doing an activity with an external load, doing that to a certain level of intensity, and then following that by doing something at your own body weight with at a much lower intensity helps you kind of go to the next one very well, if that makes sense, if that was a little
It
bit
does.
vague. But
It does.
basically,
It
yeah,
does. It does.
strength training kind of has a very positive influence on your body when you are going to do stuff later on. So having an endurance part of your session at the end of a workout is just a good way to go about it. Yeah,
Correct me if I'm wrong.
yeah.
Basically, what Arun is saying, let's say you've hit a set of squats. You've done 4 to 5 sets of squats. After that, maybe you've done a couple of sets of lunges. After that, for your cardio, when you, let's say, pick stair climbing, because your squats and lunges have been at a very high intensity, in simple words, there's lots of weight added, so it's very difficult. When you climb the stairs, you may feel, oh, this is not as tough as that. Is that
Absolutely, yeah,
a fair summary?
definitely. There will be some sort of fatigue, but your joints and your tissues will be well lubricated. There will be sort of, your body will be physically very well prepared to do the task of climbing your stairs. And it may suck because obviously your fatigue is definitely going to be something that's there after a set of heavy squats or maybe at the end of a workout. But your body is very well prepared to be able to handle the task of climbing those stairs. And I think that fact is something that I've made great advantage of in my own training, and I see a lot of other people kind of benefiting from doing something challenging right after doing a, say, heavy resistance session. So yeah, that would be a really good way to go about it.
Let's move on to part 2 of that question then.
Yeah. About nutrition and getting protein and veggies. I think the protein conversation. I think you touched upon this when you were making a comment as well. Is that if if we want to make sure that we hit these targets of saying, hey, this is the amount of protein I need, this is the amount of veggies I need, these are the amount of carbs I need. I think something that sort of, if we're able to kind of have that conversation in our heads as to how do we address these barriers, as to what are the barriers preventing me from getting enough protein or veggies, I feel like that conversation would go a lot smoother. And just to kind of give context to this, um, I think Indian nutritional sort of plate right now, if you were to look at any average Indian household, probably easy to say that there is some sort of deficiency with regards to protein, because getting enough protein on a daily basis in an Indian diet doesn't always happen. Veggies probably is accounted for. There are a lot of carbs, and for the most part, a home cooked meal will have less fat. So calorically, you may not be too egregious, but in terms of how our daily diet is sort of structured, yes, there are loopholes for protein and veggies. And like this person is saying, this is sort of one area where they don't get enough. And so a barrier that most people face, if I was to go off of a recommendation and say, hey, every day, wake up in the morning, you need to eat this salad, you need to make sure you have these many egg whites, or sort of these sort of, oh, if you did this solution will be this would work itself out. But the reality is there has to be somebody in your household, or it has to be you making sure that all of these things are things that you are preparing. And I found the greatest success with my nutrition came from the fact that if I was able to have somebody like a cook paying somebody an X amount of money just to be able to come address my nutrition. Uh, like right now, my situation is that every day I get some fresh veggies. I have somebody who comes, does the meal prep, and is able to kind of get all the meat and veggies done. And so every day I have my sort of nutrition taken care of. But cut back to a couple of years ago when I used to live at home with my parents, it was such a big burden at home to have to cook for 3 adult individuals and then a fourth adult individual who has these dietary requirements of a crazy person. And so all of a sudden, how is Arun going to get his chicken while the rest of the family wants to eat sambar and other things? It is a very big challenge. And so, what are the barriers that you face in your life to being able to consume these things? I think having a very honest conversation with yourself as to say, is this a fair thing for me to ask from my mother at home? Or if not, how do I kind of go about it? Like there are subscription services that I am aware of now that provide all fresh cut, all veggies, everything just comes straight to your house. And while they would be a certain amount of financial investment, all of these things like a subscription service or having somebody to come cook for you and then having your fresh veggies got to you every day. I think those things, if we are able to have a system in place to have these things available to you on a daily basis, the difficulty of staying adherent to all of these, oh, did I get enough protein, did I get enough veggies, would be a lot easier. And finding a system and kind of investing in a system for yourself to make sure all of these things get to you every day is super important. So like if you're somebody who lives at home, uh, see if you can able to scrounge up some money to be able to afford maybe a subscription service that does provide you some of these things. If you're living alone, maybe consider less Zomato and Swiggy, and then see if you can get yourself a cook for a couple of grand a month who's able to come and kind of give you what your body needs for nutrition. So I think these barriers as to how what this person's barriers are, very often I feel like in an Indian context, the barriers that we face are all very similar. Not being able to get enough protein, not being able to get enough veggies, these are all similar barriers. And being able to try to find a way to address the specific barriers that you have in your life, I feel like, yeah, just kind of sitting down and saying, hey, what's the system to help me kind of figure this out would be a sort of healthy way of being able to get it done.
I think that's brilliant, Arun. Just add a tiny thing. You've got to also make sure that you buy the groceries over the weekend. That's something that works for me. I have a cook that comes in. I mean, let me be honest, I don't cook. I have a cook that comes in, but I have to make sure that there are vegetables and protein that the cook can make. If I haven't bought chicken, if I haven't bought paneer,
absolutely,
what is my cook going to make? She's going to make whatever rice and dal is there. So that can also be a little bit of an issue for some people.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next question. So the next question is from Preetham. Okay. I'm a 40-year-old man who's a father of 2 kids. I have an extremely busy and hectic job. Sadly, I have only 30 minutes to work out. The equipment that I have is 2 16-kilo kettlebells, 2 20-kilo kettlebells, and 2 24-kilo kettlebells. I also have 1 pull-up bar and 1 glute loop and some resistance band. Can you help me with the plan? And I spoke with Preetham. When Preetham is saying he has 30 minutes, he means he has 30 minutes for 6 days of the week.
Right. That's nice to hear that somebody is actively choosing to even set aside 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week is a really cool thing, especially when being a father of 2 kids and busy in a hectic job. I'm sure that it's not easy for this person to even have that approach of, okay, I'm just going to dedicate half an hour every day to myself. So big ups to Preetham for being able to look at it that way, as saying this is what I can do, as opposed to, oh, I don't have any time. Because it would be very easy for him to just like say, hey, half an hour a day, I'm just going to tap off. But like half an hour of saying I'm going to commit to this is an amazing thing. So props to him for saying that. As for the equipment and the plan side of it, I firstly think that it's an abundance to have these many kettlebells at home, and I think it's awesome that this person does, because this allows for slightly more interesting programming, and programming in this case is to design this plan. In that, if you are limited by the equipment that you have, your the things that you could do also are kind of limited. But given that the lightest weight that this person has is a 16 kilo, and the heaviest that this person could go up to is 224, which is 48 kilos. There's a large range in there in terms of the weights this person could use, and therefore the different kinds of exercise this person could do. Because like squatting with a 16-kilo kettlebell may be challenging at first, but within a couple of weeks' time, that may not be challenging. And so, how are you going to progress something with the squat? But that, and so having heavier kettlebells will definitely help. Having said that, given that this person has range of the different equipment that they have and resistance bands, I think in 30 minutes a day, assuming that you've given yourself time to warm up, and you've also given yourself time to kind of like slowly cool down, because you do have to go to the next activity. So like assuming it's 30 minutes, roughly gives this person 15 to 20 minutes to actually do this physical exercise
True.
part of it.
I agree with you.
And so from a fitness coach's perspective, I'm left feeling that how do we create a stimulus, a physical stimulus from exercise that is sufficient enough for this gentleman to be able to have some change happen in their life over, say, how many ever months or however long this person does, and that what we're doing has to have an effect. You could 30 minutes, you can come in and just do a little bit and leave. But if you make your 30 minutes sort of intense enough or strong enough of a stimulus to your body, then over time this person will definitely see themselves getting stronger. So I say this to say that within those 30 minutes, trying to find ways to be able to challenge yourself with the equipment that you have is important. So think things like high intensity stuff. Think things like kind of where you're challenging your body at a very high level, and the amount of rest that you are given as well is also cut short. So it's the nice part about this challenge is that this person has to do something strength based, but because they're constrained for time, the lack of rest also acts as a sort of physiological endurance challenge, if you were to say, on the strength endurance kind of part of the spectrum. I'm sorry if this is very jargony, but the reality is,
I was going to
yeah,
come in and say, let's keep it a little more
yeah,
simple. Yeah.
yeah. All of this to say that doing something super intense will help build this person's strength. So, like, you could be squats, you could do presses, you could do deadlifts, you could do cleans. Whole bunch of stuff with kettlebells. I'm not sure how experienced this person is with all of these things. Given that they do have a lot of equipment, I'm assuming that they have some sort of experience as to how to press or squat or do things with kettlebells. So I think having some sort of resistance work where you're doing sets of, say, 15 to 20, or say for overhead or like upper body work, you could do larger sets. And then you automatically, this person is constrained because they have to wrap up in 30 minutes. So if I've got to do 3 sets or 4 sets of upper body and lower body, I can't be like doing something for 30 seconds and then like chill for 3 minutes. It's going to have to be on the clock. So I think timing your work and rest periods would be super helpful in this situation. Say, set a timer and say for the next 30 seconds, I'm going to do one squat. I'm going to do, I'm going to do like a couple of squats. I'm going to do some couple of presses, couple of rows. If you have a pull-up bar and some resistance bands, you can do some pull-ups even, or even just like pulling the band. Have a sort of work period where you're doing something super intense, and then at the same time, give yourself a certain amount of rest. So you say doing something for 60 seconds, give yourself a certain amount of rest, and then get back into it. The rest periods also have to be timed, because in this case, we want to make sure that we're efficient with our time. We're getting done within the time that we set for ourselves, and then keep going to the next. And given that this person is willing to do this 6 days a week, I'd say that this person doesn't need any more than 2 to 3 sets of whatever resistance work that they're doing over a daily basis. Because if you were to do 2 to 3 sets of any exercise, if you're doing it 6 days a week, that's 18 to 20 sets that this person is doing over the course of a week. And so you don't need to really do too much, because over the course of a week, this person will do a lot. But every day, getting 2 to 3 sets of whatever strength work, whatever resistance work that you think is important for upper body, lower body, core work, uh, and then kind of staying consistent with that, I think would just be a good way to do it. So warm up, get your body ready, and then 2 to 3 sets of, say, some upper body compound work, maybe some lower body compound work. Could do maybe an upper body, lower body split. Maybe one day could just be an upper body day, one day could be lower body day, or it could do kettlebell complexes where you're doing upper body and lower body at the same time. And then doing that for a little bit, uh, say 15 minutes of that, and then give yourself sort of 5 minutes to cool down and maybe do something to get your heart rate or like your body back down to normal, and that could be the end of the session. And so it's awesome to, like, I enjoy the fact that this person has a challenge of being able to only do this in 30 minutes, and I think it's definitely possible for this person to really create some change in their life, um, given that they are so sort of keyed in about, hey, I this is the equipment I have, this is what I need to do. And yeah, I think it'll be a really cool thing for this person to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me pose another question to you for this
Yeah.
guy. Let's say this guy warms up for 5 minutes, cools down for 5 minutes. The rest he has 20 minutes. Would you say something like a kettlebell swing challenge, where this guy does a lot of kettlebell swings in this 20-minute period, and the breaks could either be a press or a pull?
Yeah, that would be amazing. Honestly, my mind when you were talking about kettlebell swings, and then pairing it with press or a pull, that does so much for the body in that there is so much of your body working when you're doing kettlebell swings. That pairing it with a press or a pull, I think, is a great way to do it. You mentioned Dan John at the start of it, and I think his template of push, pull, hinge, and squat is something that all of us across the world have kind of benefited from. And I know it's push, pull, hinge, and squat is not all of it. There's a few more after it, but for the most part, if this person is able to do some sort of upper body push and a pull and some sort of a lower body push and a pull, which is a hinge and a squat, I think this person would be very well served. So a kettlebell swing in this case would be a hinge, a lower body pull, and the upper body would be the press and this thing. So being able to break it up into different buckets, say push, a pull, a hinge, and a squat. And if you're able to some sort of within a week put a little bit of water into each bucket, then you'd kind of see this person would kind of see themselves kind of moving forward in all area in all parts of their sort of journey.
I think it's excellent. Moving on to the next question.
Yeah.
So the next question is from Chandrasekhar. We know strength training is very helpful for running, but there isn't much talk about relation between running and routines done by bodybuilder, which is like basically Monday biceps and Tuesday chest and Wednesday lats and Thursday legs, that kind of a split. Does following a typical bodybuilding split where you do one body part a day have similar benefits as a whole body strength training routine for runners?
I think this is an interesting question. I feel like a lot of us, our fitness journeys come from what we're experienced with. And I think in India, particularly, bodybuilding as a whole has been part of our country's makeup for a very long time. I think Indians traditionally, bodybuilding is something that has existed in our culture for a very, very long time. I'm very especially when I talk to bodybuilders nowadays at the gym or even outside, the level of discipline and adherence they have to their training programs is extremely is something that I marvel at. And I say this to say that a bodybuilding split very often is like, say, back and bis, chest and tris, and being able to isolate different body parts. And the challenge with that is that you've got to make sure you hit all your body parts. So like I can't be somebody who just does back and bis and then chest and tris and ignores all the others. And so if somebody is on a bodybuilding split, I am 1,000% sure that they're extremely disciplined about what they're doing. If they are actually doing all of the things that they're supposed to be doing, it would be very hard for them to actually do stuff outside of it. Because being a bodybuilder actually involves you putting that much physical stress on all of your body parts that they end up building quite literally and becoming sort of hypertrophied or becoming bigger. And if this person is doing all these things religiously to begin with, it's going to be very hard for them to do running as a whole. So when we're talking about bodybuilding as a whole and how a bodybuilding routine may impact running, I'm of the opinion that a bodybuilding routine is a great way to be disciplined about something. But whether it serves the purpose of running, I don't know that it leaves enough in the tank for this person to be able to go run later on, if you get what I'm saying. Like if you're doing 6 days of like split all your splits, being able to run on top of that would be a very, very challenging thing. And so I would want to take a step back and say, okay, is running the focus or is bodybuilding the focus? And given that this person is sort of talking about running being the focus, I would say base running as your main activity. And you can kind of adopt splits of saying, hey, okay, you know what? Today is just going to be one day where I maybe do something lower body related just for like my extremities. I could do some ankle, calf exercises. And so being able to split where you focus on in each training session is not necessarily a bad thing, but to do it the way a bodybuilder does it, I don't know that it kind of has the same benefits. We're talking about rep ranges that are on the higher end. We're talking about sets of 15 or 20 and doing things like bicep curls for sets of 15 to 20 for 4 to 5 sets. I don't know that it correlates as directly with running as it does as maybe doing push-ups or like hanging stuff that challenges your body in a way that will benefit running. So I think bodybuilding is the especially a bodybuilding routine is just an amazing thing to do. But whether it benefits running, uh, I'd say that there are certain areas where you could think of it as almost like, yeah, it's kind of the opposite of what we're trying to go for in terms of what would be good training with regards to running. Having said that, it is possible to do. I'd say if this person wants to dedicate a couple of months a year just to doing bodybuilding and then say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do running for the next like 2 to 3 months. Yeah, you could easily do that. And so it doesn't have to be an either or situation. If that makes sense, you could definitely have your bodybuilding side that you commit to for a certain couple of months a year. Okay, summer's coming. I want to look like this by the time I go to the beach. Yeah, then definitely give yourself time in the off season or like during the colder months to do that. And then yeah, you could go do running later on. So I say this to say that I think having a routine for yourself is beneficial, period. Whether bodybuilding routines benefit running, I'd say there's a little bit of a stretch there. So if that makes sense.
Perfect. We've come to the end of all the questions, Arun, and I can't thank you enough for doing this. So, when all these questions came in, Arun and me had a conversation. I took him through all the questions, and so I didn't spring any surprises on Arun. And then I decided, let me add a last minute question of my own, and I'm going to
Okay.
just kind of put
Yeah, let's
Arun
hear
on
it.
the spotlight because he's had no time to think of this question. So this question comes in from a guy called Brigu. He's on the other end. He's also the one asking the question.
Yeah.
So his question is as follows. I have run a 2 hour, 8 minute half marathon and I have about 15 pull-ups. My goals
Nice.
for 2024 physically are I want to get to about 20 pull-ups and I want to get to a sub 2 in the half marathon.
Nice. Very nice.
What would you recommend?
Firstly, right off the bat, Brigo, that's amazing. I didn't know you had 15 pull-ups. That's fucking strong. That's really cool. I'm sorry for the profanity. That's
No. Feel free. Feel
Yeah.
free to use profanity. It's all right.
That's genuinely an amazing thing to do. I personally like. I think listening to somebody who's been through a half marathon, honestly, I feel like the level of dedication and patience required to be able to do that is amazing. And so you were talking about bringing it into sub 2 hours and getting to 20 pull-ups from 15 pull-ups. Um, right off the bat, I'd say 2024, we are in the fourth month right now, and this would give you roughly about 7 to 8 months to the rest of the year. Within 7 to 8 months, I think if you're able to commit to keeping like some sort of a weekly standard, and I'd say this to say that the to get from 15 pull-ups to 20 pull-ups, it's like I would think of it as a bigger challenge for you to be able to for your body to be able to do 20 pull-ups with a certain level of ease requires a certain level of strength. And for us to be able to build that level of strength that that will allow us to do 20 pull-ups with ease requires a stimulus that is larger than what you are applying currently, if that makes sense. So you're currently able to do 15, your body's able to do 15 easily. But for us to get to 20, the level of strength that we need to have in our lats, our hands, and all of these things has to be to the level of 20. And so what we're going to want to think about at that point is how do I one the skill of pull-ups at this point, I'm sure you are pretty very proficient. You are definitely not a beginner if you can do 15. And so being able to be technically proficient with the skill will only get you so far. And so you've definitely shown that. But to be able to go to the next level, things like weighted pull-ups, things where we're kind of overloading the system while also making sure that we don't tax ourselves too much, if you get what I mean. So doing weighted pull-ups is great, but how much weight do we add? How many reps do we do? How often do we do weighted pull-ups? Are we always going hard all the time? Are we structuring it in such a way where Brigu's first session of pull-ups is maybe 5% or 10% more than what he would normally do, and then stick to that 5% or 10% increment. An example of way to be able to think about this: if you have 15 right off the bat, do sets of 3 to 4 with slightly over body weight, and then over the course of a week, if you're able to hit a volume that is appreciable. So say like I'm just going to randomly assume that you have a very similar split with the man. So you're doing 6 days a week of training, and in each of those six days in a week, you're doing some amount of pulling. Say you're doing 2 to 3 sets of pull-ups every 2 sessions in a week. So like say 3 to 4 sessions in a week where you're doing pull-ups, you have 2 to 3 sets of pull-ups. I'd say you'd be doing roughly about 18 sets or 15 sets, and
Yeah.
you'd get around a ballpark of an X number of a number that we have. And then once you found a baseline where, hey, okay, the amount of work that I'm doing is not killing me, it's not too challenging. How do I add a little bit to this? And that's where I feel like kind of overloading the system is super important, because with something like pull-ups, you are limited by your body weight. And if you are able to move your body weight for 15 reps very easily, the benefit of moving your body weight continuously again and again may not be that would not be that much, and so adding a little bit of external resistance would help. And adding resistance in the form of weighted pull-ups is a good way to do it. I think another way to also tackle the same issue would be to see on your last 15th pull-up, where is it that you feel you fail? Is it your lats giving out? Is it you not being able to hold the sort of packed position? Where is the movement breaking for you? And being able to look at that weak link and also address it might also be a cool way to think about it. In that, at what point is your pull up failing? And I say this to say that for me on push ups, like on my last push up, I know that my arms will have the strength to push myself up, but my back would look like a C, like almost like I'm cloudy to the floor. And so we all individually have certain sort of, I don't want to call it a weak point, because anybody who can do 15 pull-ups is a fucking beast. So on the 15th pull-up, where is it that you are failing, and try to maybe have a little bit time of your session carved out to addressing just the bit that you struggled with on the 15th pull-up.
So where I'll tell you where I struggle with. I
Yeah.
struggle with going, I don't know what we would call this.
The right above the top. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
finished position.
The finished
That's
position.
yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely. That's the position where your lats are most contracted.
Yeah.
That's the position where you are right at the top of the movement.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely that's, given that you've been able to identify that, doing things like lat pull downs just with the machine, where you're not moving and you're all you're doing is focusing on the end range.
Yeah.
And being able to build strength in that end range would definitely help you perform that movement with a little more ease. And so you've got sort of a system of saying, hey, okay, I want to do weekly X amount of work on my pull-ups. I'm going to add a little bit of resistance to it, and I'm also going to address the part of my pull-up that's kind of a little bit struggling. And I think coming to the running portion of it, being able to complete it within 2 hours, sort of was the half marathon that you did the first half marathon that you did, or is this, oh, it's something that you've been doing for awesome. So I think that proves to everyone that this is something that you have been, no, I don't know, proves to yourself that like this is an activity that you have a fair level of competency with. This is something you've done over the course of time. And so I say this to say that just like how we're kind of trying to overload pull-ups, being able to, for Brigu to be able to scratch off a few minutes, I don't know that it would be the same as a beginner. Like, for example, we could take a beginner who's maybe they're quite fit, but they've never done anything endurance. They'd be able to shave time off of whatever endurance event that they do just by practicing the endurance event more, if you get what I mean. Brigu, in this situation, like you, I don't know that having you do a half marathon every month, like, yes, I'm pretty sure that would help, but that's a very brute force way of like just run as much as you can all the time. I think a slightly more intelligent way to be able to think about this would also be having a monthly sort of how much volume of running we're doing. I think definitely running is a skill that you've got to practice off it. And if you are looking to target a sub to 16, like a sub to half marathon, then having it become an activity that you are comfortable with is super important. And so regular kind of endurance runs over the course of the next 8 months, being able to, like, on a monthly basis, you're like, hey, okay, how much mileage have I done over the course of a month? So making sure you're putting water in that bucket of training the skill that we want to get proficient at. Outside of that, the volume that you're doing, I would say, uh, just like we had a question where we were talking to this other person who was talking about covering 110K, and I remember mentioning on a monthly basis, give yourself a challenge of saying, hey, can I test myself to see where I am with regards to this? You have 8 months to say get to your sub 2, but how do you do on a 10K? Are your 10K times getting better? Are your 5K times getting better? And so having these benchmarks that you set for yourself once a month, not too often, once a month, once in 6 weeks, once in 8 weeks, even once in 2 months is perfectly fine. But give yourself this benchmark to see where you currently stand. If you're going to get a sub 2, I am certain your 10K time is going to reduce and your 5K time is also going to reduce. So given that this correlation happens, you don't have to do a half marathon every 1 month. You could just do something slightly shorter than that, but also make sure you're getting in the required amount of mileage over the course of it. Think of it as Brigu's body has to be more efficient at the skill of running so that Brigu completes everything in 2 hours. And so the level of proficiency and efficiency that you have with it comes from allowing yourself to be in that space of just you're running as much as you need to run. Outside of that, if you were to look at like running as a skill and kind of address it the way we spoke about pull-ups, what part of running is something that you feel that hey, if for example, something that I play ultimate frisbee, and for me, when I run and I find myself really getting gassed, one of the things I really struggle to do is to keep my spine upright. This is just something very random. What part of running for you is the first thing that maybe breaks down, or what part of running for you is something that you possibly struggle with? Like, what body part is something that causes you, like, do you get cramps? Do you get what is your running held back by? If that makes sense, this is me asking you that.
So I'll tell you what happens with me. My posture goes for a toss. My neck is like this, and I'm always getting like hunched over fully.
Right. So thinking of it as thinking of your body as an efficient system. The inefficiencies get highlighted when we are pushed to our max. Does that make sense, right?
Yeah.
So like it's when we really are trying to like see how much we are capable of is when all these inefficiencies start coming out. So to go back to the previous point, I wouldn't call that a flaw. I'd just say that that's something we default to at the time of crisis, because that's what happens. And so if we were to just address what our posture looks like at a time of fatigue, and this is one of the reasons why I really enjoy resistance training, which is that we have the ability to stress these mechanisms without having to have to go through the load of running a full marathon, if you get what I mean. Like your posture is something that you can emphasize in your own training, say through heavy rack holds or maybe strong overhead presses. You can emphasize that part of your training, and that will give a positive correlation to the running that comes later on. And specifically, like with running, I think our posture not failing, a lot of us might associate it with our upper body, but a lot of it has to do with our core being able to transmit force from your lower body and making sure your upper body is stacked on top of it. And so I would look a little bit into what your core training is looking like. Are you able to do leg raises very well? Are your hip flexors of a certain level of strength? Or how are you on a side plank? Being able to have a core that is functioning and doesn't fail towards the end is something that I think is super important for running. I've faced a lot of I've benefited greatly from looking at, hey, what is the core work that I could be doing that will benefit my running? And I say this to say that you don't have a weak core, because I know for a fact that if you were to pick up two heavy ass farmer like kettlebells, you would be able to do it far better than I could.
I don't think that's true.
No. I say like the nuance here that I'd like maybe our listeners to also grasp is that I'm not saying Brigu has a weak core. All I'm saying is Brigu's running could benefit if Brigu was to spend a little bit more time addressing core related work in his training, if that makes sense.
Makes sense.
That I think that to me I think is super important, because having an approach to get to a goal is super important. But what are the variation? What are the things that are holding you back from being able to achieve this goal, and having a sort of analytical mind in terms of how do I address what my weaknesses are, and then fixing those things, I think will give you far more returns than kind of just saying, hey, I'm just going to go run half marathon every so often. So it's a long-winded way of saying having a system for yourself to get your weekly volume in. And then while you're also doing that, attack whatever I call a weakness, which is not really a weakness, it's just what we default to at times of stress. So I think finding a way to address that in training will help benefit that. So we're talking about core work for running. We were talking about the top of a pull-up, things like lat pull downs, things like being able to just right at that finished position, being able to emphasize those things in training will give you stronger pull-ups. I'm certain of it. So does that kind of answer your question?
Absolutely perfect. Perfect. This was really good. Arun, thanks a lot for taking time out and doing this. I'm sure everybody who's listens will enjoy this conversation. I have a feeling you're coming back for another episode.
Thank you for saying that. For me, I enjoy talking shop, and I think you and I have had a relationship for a very many number of years in terms of having conversations that mean something to us in the fitness space. And I'm more than happy to come back and do another episode of the podcast.
Thank you so much. And for those of you who've listened, if you've liked our conversation, please hit the like button. And thank you so much.
Thanks.